Thank you, Mark. And one last point that I'd like to make before we take some questions. The presidential debates weren't always run by the Bipartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. From 1976 until 1984, the League of Women Voters, a very respected civic organization, was in control of the presidential debate process. In advance of every presidential debate, they would meet with the participating candidates and negotiate aggressively to ensure that popular, independent, and third-party candidates were invited, and to ensure that the debate formats actually improved the substance of the debate discourse. In 1980, for example, the League of Women Voters invited John B. Anderson, a moderate Republican who ran as an independent for presidency, to participate in the 1980 presidential debates. President Jimmy Carter adamantly refused to debate Anderson, but the League didn't capitulate to the president's demands. Instead, it hosted a one-on-one debate between Ronald Reagan and John B. Anderson that attracted over 55 million viewers. The League had the courage to refuse the President of the United States. In 1984, a different process happened. The major party candidates tried to manipulate the debate formats. The process usually happened as follows. The League would submit a list of proposed panelists to ask questions for the debates. The candidates could veto a biased or incompetent panelist. In 1976, there were 0 vetoes. In 1980, there was 1 veto. But in 1984, there were 68 consecutive vetoes. The candidates were just trying to get rid of difficult questions. So the League went public. They held a press conference and they lambasted the campaigns. What did the candidates do? They were so terrified of the public criticism that they capitulated to the League's demands and allowed for challenging questioners for the next 1984 debate. It is because the League of Women Voters did such a wonderful job that the Commission on Presidential Debates was created. The major parties didn't like the fact that a women's organization, a civic group, was telling their boys how to run for president. Didn't like the fact that the civic organization was telling their candidates they had to participate with a third-party challenger or they had to engage in a difficult format that might turn them into deer in front of headlights. And so the Commission on Presidential Debates was formed despite the public interest. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
How would you, how would you recommend that an alternative to the Public Debate Commission select which candidates could debate? Because there's, as we all know, there's hundreds of people out there running for president, not just the 2 that we hear about the most.
Absolutely. The panel that Rob Richie served on, called the Appleseed Electoral Reform Project, is the criteria that the Citizens Debate Commission has endorsed. The criteria is as follows. If a candidate reaches 5% in pre-debate polls, or if a majority of American voters want to see that candidate in the presidential debates, they will be invited. But just to explain the difficulty of getting into these and meeting these criteria, true, hundreds of candidates run for president. Billy Joe Clegg of the Clegg Won't Pull Your Leg Party ran for president in 92, 96, and 2000, and he hasn't done very well. But how many candidates are actually on enough state ballots to win an electoral majority? Just 2 third-party candidates in 1988, just 3 in 1992, just 4 in 1996, and just 5 in 2000. So even if you include every single candidate that actually had an electoral chance of winning the Electoral College majority, you'd only have 7 candidates in the last presidential cycle. If you use the Appleseed threshold, the only candidates that have met the Appleseed threshold in the past 15 years are Ross Perot, Ralph Nader, and Pat Buchanan. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
As you know, that there are corporate liberals who don't want Ralph Nader to be into the campaign or in the debates. For example, in today's New York Times, Howard Dean has an op-ed right up top, says, "For Ralph Nader, but not for president," arguing he shouldn't be in the election. So to Mr. Choate and to the whole panel, if Nader meets the Appleseed criteria, do you all agree he should be in the debates?
Well, absolutely. At this point, Nader is doing 6 to 8% in the polls. When one takes a look, the federal law on establishing third parties say, do you get 5%? 5% is a legally established basis. I think these criteria to say, are you on enough state ballots, which is a tough test. I've been through that 3 times. It is a tough test to get on enough state ballots to qualify. You've got to get thousands and thousands of signatures to do that. That evidences support. Then if you're at 5% of the public support, and you've got a majority of the American people that say they want it, who is a corporate board to turn and say, no, majority of American people, you shouldn't be allowed to listen in a presidential debate to this man. A majority of us want it, but no, you can't have it. So yes, if Nader can get on the ballot, if he's got 5% and half of the American people want to hear him, he should absolutely be there.
Are you disappointed, follow-up, are you disappointed that Buchanan, a candidate like Buchanan or Perot is not running this year?
No, they had their runs. They ran great campaigns. They performed an enormous public service. They brought issues before the public that the two major parties would not do. I very much admire Ralph Nader for what he is doing and the abuse that he's taking, because he's speaking to the right issues, the things that we should be talking about. I regret that we don't have other people standing up, breaking away from the two parties who strongly disagree with their parties, that are not standing up as third-party candidates. I think this will help that process. I think in the long run, this will open up discussion in America. It will keep politics from being a monopoly of a handful of people who control two parties.
I just thought I'd add quickly that there are other candidates out there, there are other parties running, like the Libertarian Party actually runs more candidates for congressional elections than any other party. They've done that for years, and they often have an effect in races and win local races. And when you think about the Libertarian Party's standpoint, they're a party believes that government should be smaller, and they have a choice between Democrats and Republicans right now, and both parties are for basically a much bigger government than used to be there 4 or 5 years ago, and spending has gone up, and socially conservative stances of the Bush administration, but sort of tax issues for the Democrats. They clearly probably don't feel very represented by the choices they have there, and a lot of voters might be interested in them. And so they have a candidate that'll probably appear on more than 40 ballots. The Green